You're listening to the Reinvest Podcast, where each Tuesday we show business owners and entrepreneurs how to reclaim, reconnect, and refocus their life by bringing you the top real estate professionals in the industry. We'll help you diversify into real estate by equipping you with the tools and tactics to build generational wealth. Your hosts, Garrett Gatton and Seth Ciminillo. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Reinvest Podcast, episode number 84. Excited for our guest here today. It's always nice to interview guys and gals that are in our neck of the woods, but are doing some really high-level real estate stuff. So we're excited. And let's get right in. Mitch Renda is our guest for today. Mitch, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
Well, interesting question.
Doing
Mitch.
good.
It's at the time of this recording of the episode. I had a kid 3 weeks ago. And Seth had a major surgery like 3 days ago. So
well, it was like 4 or 5 days ago, but yeah.
Who's keeping track? You know, you're missing a major organ. Okay, minor organ.
Minor organ. Yeah.
But you're here.
Yeah, they had to rummage around in my intestines a little bit, cut me open, but I'm okay. I lived.
So I don't know if this speaks to how important I am or just the podcast in general, but I'll go with
it's how important you are, Mitch.
Yeah. That is what I thought.
Let this serve as a reminder to anybody listening. This is how dedicated we are to our guests, to the podcast. So, no, despite some wisdom, you showed up today, Seth. So,
here I
shame
am.
on you, and thank you for being here. So, Mitch, tell us about yourself. Tell us about your company. Who are you? Where are you from? And then we'll get into how you got into real estate investing.
Who is the Mitch Renda?
Mitch Renda. Where am I from? I grew up most of my life in Jacksonville, Florida. We moved around a little bit as a family, but most of my life spent in Jacksonville, Florida. What brought me to Cincinnati today, where I currently am, is my old W-2 corporate finance career, which I'll speak a little bit to in a bit. But 1027 is my company that I co-founded and now co-manage with my brother, Kevin. So we're a family-owned business, and we are a real estate private equity firm. We do investment, asset, and property management, kind of all the above. And we focus majority multifamily, like 95% plus multifamily is our portfolio today. And that spans across Cincinnati, which is where I'm based, Columbus, which is where Kevin, my partner, is based. And then we also have some property in Dayton. So we're strictly Ohio at the moment. We do like our Kentucky markets, Lexington and Louisville and Northern Kentucky. Just yet to do a deal down there. And we've traditionally focused on moderate to heavy value add type projects. It's kind of how we got into the game on a smaller scale, which I can also speak to. And then we kind of kept that going on a larger scale when we started to do syndications a couple of years ago. And then as the market kind of shifted, we've kind of opened up our criteria and buy box a little bit. So for example, we just closed on a deal in Columbus last year. That was a new construction lease up. So we bought it straight from the developer once they got C of O, and we finished the lease up because he had partially leased it up already. So we continued the lease up process. So that's the quick rundown. And then we can get into the kind of the origin story and all that, but that's where I'm at right now.
So like real quick, 1027, it kind of piques your interest. What does that mean?
Yeah.
And where'd you come up with the name?
Yeah. So the name came from about a 5-minute conversation we had when we bought our first duplex back in early 2020. So not that long ago, but that was our first property we ever bought. And we realized late in the process of buying that property that we probably should create an LLC and separate it from, personally owned stuff. And his birthday is on the 27th of March. Mine's on the 10th of October.
Oh,
so we came up with a 1027 name real quick. Didn't really think it would stick, but it stuck. And since then, however, as you guys know, faith is a big part of our lives and our journey. Yeah. And so I stumbled across Mark 10:27 one time doing, devos and spending some time in the Word, which Mark 10:27 is with man, it's as impossible, but not with God. With God, all things are possible.
No way. That just happened to be.
That
was Mark
suspicious.
10:27.
That's suspicious.
We call that a coincidence.
I promise. I had thought in my head, I did not like the story of our name 1027. The 5-minute conversation of how that came about to be. And so I was like, that'd be much cooler if there was like
a good verse.
Because it does sound like it's biblical, right? It sounds like it could definitely relate to something biblical, just 10:27 chapter verse. And then he threw that one at me one time.
Did you know that Psalm 10 verse 27 says, "Lo and behold, I have a painful disease in my loins"?
Does it really?
No, I'm just kidding. Oh, okay. That was a Tim Hawkins bit that I stole.
That's good. That's good.
He was talking about how he was at a show and a kid gave him like a book to autograph or something, and he put down his favorite verse and he like misreferenced it or something like that. And whether it was his joke or it was a real story, that was the verse that he wrote down in the kid's book. And he's like, the kids later like, oh wow, what's this verse? It's Tim Hawkins' life verse. Yeah. So anyway, that your story is way cooler.
Yeah, that is
much more
also,
redemptive.
I'm pretty sure if I thought about that a little longer, I'm pretty sure Psalm 10 doesn't have 27
doesn't have 27 verses. Yeah, it's like Acts 29. Yeah, so that's exactly funny. Well, very cool. So then let's kind of go back to that. You said you bought your first duplex. Was that with your brother? Where'd you even get passionate about real estate? When did that come on the horizon?
Yeah, I wouldn't even say before we bought our first duplex, I wouldn't even say there was like a passion. It was kind of just something we had heard about in passing, I guess, on just various things on the internet or from, passive real estate it was a popular thing back then as it is today, as it kind of always has been. So we just knew of it and we had some extra cash. I was working 80-hour work weeks as he was at the time in our prior jobs. Like I said, I was in corporate finance for some big Fortune 100 companies. He was up in Chicago actually with Ernst & Young doing corporate audit. So we both were spending a lot of time on that, but we did want to get into, we had an entrepreneurial drive. We didn't really think real estate would quench that thirst for entrepreneurship.
Right.
But it was something. And so we just found a duplex in the Hyde Park area of Cincinnati. We probably spent like a month or two looking for a property and then found one that seemed to make sense. We ran some numbers on it, finance accounting guys. So we knew how to do underwriting from a high level.
Right.
Made the decision to buy it. And we essentially did the BRRRR method without really knowing what the BRRRR method was. So for your listeners, I'm sure they all know, but it's buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat, kind of taking the money out of a refi scenario and using it on another property and kind of trading up or scaling up each time you do it. So that's what we did with our first duplex and it worked out really well. And then we went and bought a 4-unit that was, so the first one, the duplex, I'd say was light, moderate value add, replace some counters, painted, finished the wood floors, did some concrete work outside. Some really light stuff that was pretty easy. The next one was it was basically falling apart. It was total beater of a property. It was unlivable in some areas of the home. There was the one place it was livable had a drug dealer and his 2 Rottweilers living out the back of it.
Oh, wow. Nice.
It was a nice area. Well, it was a nice area, nice street, but this one was, it was
the worst. Yeah, the worst property in the block.
It was, which is a great strategy to take for those who are trying to get into real estate. And so that's what we did on our second project. And that's what really hooked us. That's where we found a passion for it. That's where we learned what kind of impact you can make through real estate.
So just let's see, did you daisy chain the two together? You took the capital out of the first one and that's what you used to acquire and rehab the second one?
Kind of. The second one took a lot more capital. So the first one was kind of like a break-even refi. It's not like we
got your money back.
Made money. You just kind of got a money. We were in the deal without any capital in the deal, essentially. The second one, we did an all cash purchase and an all cash renovation. And that was, probably came out to be a few $100,000 in the end, or upper 200,000s. So that one was just a lot of free cash we had to use. And it wasn't so much from the prior, a little bit was from the prior refi, but it was just a whole nother undertaking that we had to pull from other places for. So that's how we did that one.
So, okay, so you renovated that one. It was a heavier lift. You had one, got a second one.
What the numbers end out being on that one once you refied it? I mean, were you able to pull your money out of the second one, or what was the aha moment after the second one that made you want to continue?
Yeah. So the second one, we pulled all our money out, and that we actually used on another 6 unit. So then we bought a 6 unit that was, I'd say, in between in terms of how much value or renovation it needed. It wasn't light moderate, but it wasn't like distressed. So it was in the middle there. And then we used the capital from that one on the next one. But what really hooked us wasn't so much like the financial aspect was great. We've now proven like, okay, we know how to do this now. We know how to, it takes cash to buy a property, but when you start recycling this stuff, it starts to build on itself.
Yeah.
And we went from a 2 to a 6 unit, and so like do this a few more times and we can have a nice personal portfolio. And so that idea opened up like, hey, we can probably make this work. It didn't play out that way because we caught the bug and then jumped ship from our full-time jobs and we just went all in. Which I can get to in a second. But what really hooked us on well, it was really value add real estate, like taking something ugly and making it beautiful. Was the impact it made on the area in the neighborhood. And so like vividly remember the conversations we would have with neighbors after we had around the time of completing / after we had completed that project, which I'm biased, but I think it is the best looking property on that street now. Like it is the best looking home on that street. It's 4 unit property, so it's not a single family home, but
bet the drug dealer's doing a great job watching out the property, for you.
Yeah, the drug dealers, he does pay his rent, so he's no, he had to go. Pretty sure he wasn't paying rent, nor did I even know if the prior owners knew he was even living in there. But there was many situations after that. So there's an older couple that lived next door. He's a pastor actually, and he came over. I'm still friendly with him today. I still talk to him when I go over there. But he had told me like he had been praying for years for somebody to come by and do something with this property, and
another coincidence,
because it felt unsafe for them, like the neighbors and the families, because there's young kids running around and everything, and you see drug deals going down and sketchy folk pulling up and going in the backyard of this house. So that's where we felt like, wow, you can actually make a difference. Like it's not just some cliche saying, like it's real. And so that's where kind of I'd say more of the purpose and faith and spiritual aspect of what we do started to make more sense.
I mean, just think about it this way from like an impact perspective. If you're going to sleep 7 to 8 hours a day, you're doing that somewhere. So let's make the assumption you're going to spend 30% of your life in a physical location, and more than that, really. So like that, people are spending significant amounts of time in an apartment, in a home, in a physical place that is their dwelling, and to make that safe, enjoyable, like that, there's just a lot of enriching aspects to that. And you hit a good point. When you go into, maybe it's a blighted area, or maybe it's not a blighted area, but the property is blighted, you have the neighborhood and the community kind of in your corner rooting for you to see good things happen. It's like rising tides raise all ships. That's what you were doing in those areas. So let's take this. I love the case study here of this journey of 2, 6 units and how you guys went all in. The main topic of today, which I think is very relatable, is every entrepreneur is faced with imposter syndrome, right? Doing something you've never done before and feeling like you're a fraud because you're figuring out as you go. And then also that slow progression of just getting reps in so that you can build that experience, that bank account that you can draw from to tackle bigger deals. So when you guys got started, did you feel that imposter syndrome, or did it feel pretty safe when you were doing the 2 unit because just you and your brother? When did you feel that like, hey, this is beyond what we're able to do?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it brings up some things I can look back on and be thankful for, but also some PTSD. I'd say when we were doing stuff with personal funds, doing the duplex, doing the quad, we were like so willing to take the risk, and we didn't we kind of knew we weren't qualified. We were very naive in what this took and how much time it took and how much money it would take. We just kind of jumped in and did it. And that's kind of been the story of our entire journeys in 1027's entire journey. So I would say if we stopped and really thought about it, we would have been like, what are we doing? Like, this is a lot to take on while we work these, pretty intense jobs,
right?
Or where our money's actually coming from. Like, this is wealth building over here. It's not income necessarily. It's a little bit, but not really. Income's over here, and we're so there was that push and pull a little bit, that internal tugging going on. But I'd say it was probably there from the beginning. But when it really started the imposter syndrome, if you will, started to become real, was when we did make the decision to go full time. So like I said, we bought our first property ever in early 2020, and then we went full time in basically January 1st, 2022.
Wow.
So that was kind of which I got married on December 31st, 2021.
Wow.
So
okay.
The first day of marriage included no more W-2 salary for
my
me.
gosh.
So
what a way to jump into the deep end.
What a way to jump in. And there's another story behind kind of how that all panned out. But basically in the end, we were in it, and we went sink or swim approach. The little bit of money that our personal portfolio was making, we never put into our own bank accounts. It was all just reinvested. The little bit that was there was reinvested. So we went from making W-2 salary to nothing. And at the same time, we had never raised any money. We had never raised a dime, right? So that's a huge part of making this a full-time job. When we realized we wanted to go full-time, we realized we had to do bigger deals, and we had to raise outside capital in order to do those deals. We could continue with this BRRRR method of small multifamily, but that would take years and years for us both to be able to quit and do this full-time.
Right.
So bigger deals, raising money. We started looking at bigger deals, and just the thought of raising a few $1,000,000 or whatever it might be, which
you got a lump in your throat. I mean, you're just like, this is a different space to play in.
Yeah. And I think that, God blessed us with just kind of like this naive, like we just didn't know what we were really getting into. Had we known, we may have not made these decisions.
Just to stop you there, you said something really interesting. Had we had known, we probably wouldn't have done it. Right. So many entrepreneurs, business owners look back, and I think there was probably a moment in their career where they're like, man, if I would have known on the front end all that it was going to take, all the energy or even the risk that was present that I didn't fully perceive, I wouldn't have done it. So would you say there's a measure of ignorance that all successful entrepreneurs have to have?
I think so. And I think, I think you can probably be an entrepreneur that understands what they're getting into and still has the stomach for it, for sure.
Yeah.
I think the way that we grew up and the way that we were wired, we kind of were wired for this W-2, put your money in your 401k, keep that safe, secure job, which isn't really that safe, secure anyway.
Right.
Once you start to really think about it. But we were kind of wired like that. So for us, I think the ignorance helped. I think the ignorance helped us jump in and go all in with it, which got us to the point where we are today, which is we're still small, right? But we wouldn't be anywhere near where we are today had we tried to like duel it with a W-2 and keep doing small multifamily, or even duel it with W-2 and try to do larger things. I just think if you're not all in, you're not going to be able to grow at the pace that at least we wanted to grow.
Yeah.
So I would say, the ignorance is probably a part of a lot of entrepreneur stories, at least ones who are probably naturally, or at least taught to be risk averse. I actually don't mind risk, but I think I was taught to be risk averse, so kind of learned to like risk.
Well, I think for this episode, I like to live in tension. I feel like my life is just constant tension because, there's wisdom on both sides. You're trying to reconcile the two and make sense of it. And one of the things that when you're listening to podcasts, you're listening to Audible books, you're reading leadership books, it's just the messaging is that you need to take bold risks, right? And Seth and I always we joke the whole 10X message from Grant Cardone. You got 10X your life, go 10X if you're not 10Xing, you're playing too small. And that is the predominant message and theme, which Obviously, people have used that advice to grow massive wealth. It's been life-changing for them because it's pushed them out of the comfort zone. But I think there's a dark side that doesn't get talked about, because usually those people that try to 10X and get over their skis and fail, they just kind of disappear, and you never really like hear about it. Because naturally we just talk about the things that we succeed in or that we win in. No one's going to be like, hey.
They're just the people that one day don't show up anymore, and you're like, huh.
Where'd so-and-so
I
go?
wonder what happened to them.
Yeah, they were fired up at one point.
Yeah, like what happened to that, And so like that's the messaging that is resounding when you're listening to leadership and entrepreneur books. So like what's your relationship with that? I mean, what's the wisdom in it? What's the dark side? How do you personally kind of hold those things in tension?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I totally agree. I think there's a dark side to that mindset. And I think the question you ultimately have to ask yourself is, why am I taking this risk? Whatever the risk is, and I think in a lot of cases, if you're in the 10X community, the sole maybe I'm generalizing. I am generalizing, but maybe I'm wrong in some ways. I think not, but a lot of it is, you're profit driven, solely profit driven. And I think if that's your sole reason for taking risk, then I think you probably will end up either one. If you fail, then you fail, and you probably won't be able to withstand that failure. So you will kind of go back into your shell and probably never want to take a risk again.
Right.
And if you don't fail, you probably just end up finding yourself like, one day down the road, what did I even, what's the purpose? So I think kind of asking yourself that question of, why am I even taking this risk to begin with, will help you really weigh whether you should take the risk or not. Right. And I think for me and for us at 1027, we have our calling. We believe in our calling, and to do what we're doing. We're only doing it because God has placed us here and has called us to this. And so the way we view risk in this business is, will this have an outsized impact for the kingdom? Like that's how we look through that lens. And it's not everybody, that's not how everybody views risk. But I think for me, it helps me feel way more comfortable with risk when I look at it like that.
That's good.
Through that lens.
Getting to the core, why am I doing this? I think a lot of people don't even take the time to have that meditative inner reflection moment, or not even a moment, season, because it takes time to have that reflection and say, why am I doing this? Because just because you see it, just because the YouTube ad pops up or your buddy's doing it and you hear the success that he's having, it doesn't mean that you've sat down and answered that question for yourself. And I think, you can build something that's successful, but like, do you know what you built? You know why you did it? That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't have a big enough why, to your point, hard times inevitably are going to come, and you're just not going to be able to withstand it. I mean, a lot of what real estate is withstanding the hard times. It's the longevity of real estate, and it's obviously you have to have good underwriting. Do you have cash reserves? But even in that, can you withstand the hard times? Can you withstand the discouragement? Can you withstand the unexpected problems?
Yeah.
And if you don't have a big enough why, you're just going to eventually, like what you said, I mean, why am I doing this? Why am I putting myself through this torture? I'm just going to throw in the towel, and it was a good try. And it just didn't work out for me. I wasn't lucky, or whatever the excuse is that you want to put up. So yeah, having your why figured out is so important.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mitch. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, my relationship with risk in general is that it is good. It is right. Like John Piper, you guys might know John Piper.
Oh, yeah.
He loves to say risk is right. Like risk is a good thing. We just need to find what the risk is that we should be taking individually on an individual level. And I totally agree. Even if you're not somebody who has a faith background or foundation, sorry if you can hear sirens out there. Even if you're not somebody with that, you still need to have some sort of a purpose behind why you're taking a big leap and why you're going neck deep into something that could totally go belly up, or it could be a huge success. Because like you just said, if you don't have that why and that purpose, you will inevitably run into problems and things that suck and things that make you question, why am I putting myself through this? Oh, well, because this is why. This is why I'm putting myself through this. And if it's just profit and money, man, I guess
what happens when that goes away?
yeah, what happens when
Your
that goes
why
away?
just went away.
Yeah, exactly. So,
And, to put maybe just kind of another scripture passage, it's funny. What I love about the Bible is it really isn't just about like faith. It's about life, right? And it kind of gives you a lens at which to look at that through. And there's a lot of wisdom there. And the Bible even says, count the cost. A man's not going to go out and build something if he hasn't counted the cost. A king in an army is not going to take his army out if he doesn't know how big the army is that he's fighting. Like, there's some forethought, some planning that goes into understanding the risk that you're taking. And I think one key is every entrepreneur, if you're going to make an impact, you're going to endeavor to take on a project, an investment, whatever that is, you have to find ways to feel the weight of that responsibility. Even if it's your own money and you don't have like a debt partner, an equity partner in the deal that's relying on your experience to operate something, you still have tenants. There are other ways that is responsible. You have a family depending on you. You need to know who is depending on you, because for me, I was one of those guys. Some guys don't need this. They have kind of the inner drive already. For me, I was kind of a fart in a windstorm. And when I got married, everything got dialed up to like 10. And I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing out here? I need to get serious about some stuff. And it was that weight of responsibility that I think helps men really focus on, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? It clarifies some of those things. So if you don't know who's depending on you and you don't feel that weight of responsibility, I don't think you're ready to make the jump.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think you said it in the beginning. I think you said you're always living in friction. And I think if you can take like a step back, third person, look at your life, and you're not experiencing friction, you're not experiencing any sort of hardship or trial. And it might not be like you have to walk through a health issue or like a huge financial burden or something like that, but there should always be some level of friction.
Yeah, right.
And because you should be, that just means you're challenging yourself,
Yeah.
And I don't know if this totally relates, but it makes me think of it. If you guys are Jordan Peterson fans, he says we all have a moral obligation to do something remarkable in our lives. Wow. And I just think through that, like, and he goes on and relates that about
Jordan's always out there dropping truth bombs on
he
people.
Is. He has these like one-liners like no one's ever had as many one-liners as Jordan.
No, he's got so many one-liners. I'll sit there and contemplate life for hours after I listen to him. But he relates that to like taking risk and like doing things that are hard.
Yeah.
Like we always need to be doing the hard thing.
Yeah. There's a book called Do Hard Things that I always think about when I'm thinking about what I'm doing. I'm just like, I need to be doing hard. Yeah, I did. You
did read it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I just thought it made the title stick out
to
you. Okay.
Gosh,
all right.
This guy. Okay. Mitch, well, speaking of doing hard things, take us to when you did your first big deal. What was your first big deal that really got you out of your comfort zone? What was the raise like? And then how did you feel as you started to go out and try to raise money for this and you didn't really have the experience?
So when it comes to raising money, whatever you think you can raise, you guys have heard this, probably take 10% of that and take that as like, that's what you should forecast you will actually raise. So put your list of investors that you think might invest in your deals together.
Cut it by 90%.
And whatever that amount is you think they might invest, and it adds up to $1 million. Okay, you probably realistically will raise 100,000. Wow. If it's your first time raising, which is exactly what happened with us. We had a list. I wouldn't call it a long list. It's a fraction of what the list is today of potential investors. And it was a fraction of what we thought we could raise. But I will say, like in our kind of sink or swim approach, we had to go find a deal. And we didn't have to necessarily find it quick. Like we had savings, we had a runway. Yeah. So we weren't making any irrational decisions or anything like that. But we did have to find a decent sized deal that we thought made sense. And we had to sell the broker / owner on the fact that we could buy it, though we've never done a deal before, other than some small stuff. And so we found a 90 unit in Dayton. This was our first deal we ever did. And the raise was right around 3 million. And so we went under contract with no partners, with no equity.
My gosh.
I guess we sold ourselves. Like that's kind of a piece of advice I have for people. And I hesitate to give this piece of advice because it sounds bad, but you kind of have to fake it till you make it with that kind of stuff.
That's why we're talking about the tension.
Yeah, you
Because
have
if you were to be honest with that broker completely, like, listen, the biggest unit we have is a 6 unit. Okay. But we can do this. Like, it wouldn't go anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, we didn't lie about anything. We just didn't, we weren't
Didn't
fully
mention it. And you
transparent
said,
because
focus on what we can do. Here's what we're
yeah,
confident on. Yeah.
exactly. You focus on what your potential is, I guess.
You're
So
like, I have two kidneys. Each of those is worth $250,000 on the black market. I've got 500,000 I can tap into if needed. Okay. So
exactly.
we're good for it.
I'm pretty sure we used that in this one. So we went under contract, and then it was real, like, right. So we had to wire money for earnest money. It was our money.
Real money. Yeah.
Earnest money. And we were like, okay, so we have essentially 30 days to figure out if this is going to be a deal we're going to do or not. And then that money goes hard. So we did our due diligence, and well, I should say we started talking to potential partners.
Yeah.
Because we knew we needed a partner. We weren't that dumb to think we could go out and raise $3 million. So we ended up finding it was like our first swing at a partner who we actually met at Best Ever. Do you guys go to Best Ever? You guys,
yeah.
He was just there a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. So we're all familiar with Best Ever. I think everybody's been to one of those conferences over the years. So we met him there. We brought the deal to him, and he was excited about it. And he's said, yeah, let's do it. So you guys go out, raise money, and then whatever you can't do, I think I can probably finish it.
Wow.
And that was a huge blessing. And so not only that, but like he was much more experienced than we were. So we leaned on his knowledge, understanding about how to do due diligence, how to, we adjusted some things in our underwriting after he got brought into the deal, how to think through that underwriting and like doing market studies and all that kind of stuff. And the due diligence isn't just like inspections, right? Like there's a legal part of due diligence. There's like the financials and doing due diligence on the financials. So you're not just looking at boilers and foundations and stuff. You're doing like a list of 50 different things we had to get through in due diligence. So anyway, we were way outside of our comfort zone during this entire thing, but we did feel good because we were partnered up with somebody who we felt confident could do it.
Which that's an important thing to kind of recognize when we ask, like, hey, does somebody have experience for this? Do you have the experience? Are you qualified? Can you do it? Is it too big of a jump? Sometimes we isolate that question to our own resources. Like, well, I couldn't never do this, so maybe I'm not ready. Well, guess what? You're just one resource out of many types of resources. So if you've read Who Not How, you found a who that was way further down the road, had capital that he was ready to commit into the deal. Sounds like he had some experience in underwriting, was able to help you polish that. You bring in a whole nother player, and now your capacity just got a lot bigger, and none of it came from within inside yourself. So, like, there are different places that you can draw confidence from. It doesn't have to be from within yourself.
Was he local to the area, or was he just somewhere else even?
No, Indianapolis. So local to the Midwest. So he understood Midwest markets. I think in a lot of ways, a lot of them are pretty similar. But not local, and neither were we. We weren't local to Dayton. We understood the market to an extent, but we weren't local there either. So that was another thing that was outside of our comfort zone, was we're not going to be able to like touch this property every day. It's not in our backyard.
Right.
So there were a lot of things new about this deal. And so we plowed forward though, and we ended up closing on that deal. I think it was within the terms we originally agreed upon. Maybe we exercised an extension or two. But we ended up closing on the deal, and then it was like, okay, now let's operate the thing, which is a whole other world in and of itself.
I'm a Lord of the Rings junkie, and there's a phrase in there where Gandalf's like, out of the frying pan and into the fire. It's like you think you're out of it, and then you're still, now the real work begins,
Yeah, like
that's awesome.
Raising capital is a job. It's tough, especially when it's your first deal. You get so many rejections. So kind of to your original question, like it was so many rejections. You start to like, is anyone ever going to want to give us money for these deals, which we thought made a whole lot of sense. We thought they were great investments. So when you first start raising money, you not only have to do the whole, like, take a 10% of what you think you can raise, but at the same time, you have to be ready to fully educate people, because most of the people you're probably talking to are probably not familiar with investing in real estate and how these syndications work and what it means to be a limited partner. And so you have to be educating. So we were educating while we were learning. We were learning and then educating, because we never done a deal before. So there was a whole bunch of just like stretching ourselves and exercising a whole bunch of new muscles that we didn't even know existed.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
All
That's
right.
awesome.
We're going to jump into our smaller pocket segment. So, Mitch, go ahead and tell us about a deal that went wrong. It could be one of your real estate deals before you started syndications. It could be a syndication. Something went wrong in a deal. What happened, and then what did you learn from it?
Yeah, that's being that we're as green or as new as we are, like we don't have that many full cycle deals, right? Like a lot of the stuff we've ever bought, we still own. But I will say the one thing that pops into my mind, at least, which could actually turn out to be a good deal now, but there's a time where it did not look like that. We bought land, so this isn't even multifamily. But we were still kind of experimenting with what we thought we were going to be doing. Like this is before we really decided to niche down and to this value add class CB real estate space that we had kind of built most of our portfolio in. And we found this interesting piece of land in a suburb of Cincinnati that we originally planned to build small bay flex industrial on. So totally different. I love industrial, by the way. I think it's a great asset class, and I think one day I would love to get into it more on like a LP side of things. But so we bought this piece of land, and then we go through due diligence on the land, and everything seemed to make sense. We didn't know what we were doing though still, so like I guess there could have been things wrong. We just didn't know how to uncover those things. So we ended up buying the land in cash, which was a huge opportunity cost because like now we're out 150. It was $150,000. Now we're out $150,000 to not use on any other deals.
And explain why you can't just get financing and pull your money out on that.
On land.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's not making any money, right? So a bank's not gonna give you a loan for a piece of land that has no plan. Like if you bought the piece of land with the whole plan to develop it, and
there was a construction portion of that was attached to it, they would give it as equity, but you can't just go burr a piece of land.
No, a piece of land, and there's maybe some land experts out there that know more than I do about it, but at that time and still today, there's no leverage we could have used on that land. It was just cash. And then when we came up with a plan with the construction budget and a pro forma, then you bring it to banks, then you can, pull out a loan and kind of make yourself whole again. However, when we started to get into, does this deal actually make sense? Talk to some consultants, some industrial players. It did not make sense. The rents you could get in that area, first of all, there wasn't enough new industrial, flex industrial in the area to really even know what rents it could be. So the feedback we were getting, the rents weren't hitting. And again, this is like one of the first things we ever did. So we were like, now we don't know what to do. So we tried to sell it. We couldn't sell it. And then the market kind of turned. So nobody was buying land.
Right.
And then actually just recently we got connected with a big developer in Cincinnati. And it seems like we're going to partner with him on multifamily townhome development there. Wow. But for a while we were sitting on 100 I think it's now 175,000 after putting together some concept design plans and doing geotech and land due diligence and all that kind of stuff. So we were just sitting on $175,000 worth of land that we can't do anything with, and we thought we'd just be sitting on it for like we were just locked in on it. And thankfully, it is again our own money. But God kind of opened up another door that hopefully pans out. We're now working with the city on getting things approved to officially start developing.
Yeah, that would be incredible to be able to do a multifamily development on that.
It would, but we've been sitting on it now for 2.5 or 3 years now. Yeah. So it's like that's just been money locked up in this piece of land that we can sell for a loss. I'm sure we could put it on the market for $100,000 and sell it, but we weren't willing to do that either.
Told us a similar story, a land story. They bought commercial prime land. Oh yeah. In a main strip in a city they didn't live in. They even partnered with a guy who's from that city, and the guy was like, "Oh yeah, it's a great opportunity."
Who was not a commercial realtor; he was a residential realtor.
He was not he wasn't even really commercial real estate guy. And then they did what you did. They bought it kind of opportunistically, hoping someone would buy it and develop it, or they would flip the land. But they used a private money lender to buy the entire purchase, and they had been sitting on it for over a year, like 14 months.
It's just
and they found out
15%
yeah, and
interest.
by the time we did the podcast with them, they still just had it.
Yeah.
So I'm
surprised he told that story. I mean, I appreciate his vulnerability,
yeah.
but that's like an actively painful wound.
I mean, you guys could have easily been in the same situation had you been like, oh man, this is a great opportunity. Let's use leverage. Let's get a hard money loan. Let's get a private money lender. Let's partner with someone else's money. And then it's a terrible experience for everyone because they're locked in the deal and their money's trapped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you guys feel responsible, but you can't do anything. Yeah, so.
Well, we'll have to do a follow-up episode once you start, if that's going to materialize, that would be a cool rags to riches kind of
and it's good because actually ground-up development is something that's a part of our business that we want to get more into.
Yeah.
And so right now there's that development, and there's potentially another one that we're working on, same partners that we're going to hopefully get going. So that's,
So I just want to summarize, because I think there's, just to bring this theme back, it's that tension of the entrepreneurial muscle of charging forward, taking new risk, but then making sure that you've got enough reps in that you understand kind of the what could go wrong and to test yourself, really, because you get tested in these situations. You guys got in, you started getting reps in, and you started playing with your own money, the house money, saw the power of it, took a big jump, but had the right people in place, and took some of those risks. And there is a myriad of ways that it sends you down these paths you could never anticipate when you first started and be like, let's buy a duplex, So it is kind of like it gains momentum and takes you in a direction, and you flesh out and grow that way. So I think we've talked about some really good principles for somebody who is an entrepreneur trying to figure out how to go to the next level and kind of what that takes. Let's go into what we call our little nugget. So, Mitch, this is the part of the show where you give us a practical takeaway, a piece of advice, maybe a principle that you kind of operate by that somebody listening could apply to their real estate investing or their business.
I think I kind of have two that pop to my mind, and they kind of go hand in hand.
You only get one. No, I'm just kidding. You could do two.
It's like 1.5. So it has a 1 in front of it. Let's round down. I will say, I think it sounds generic, but meeting new people, right? So this is kind of vague, but be curious to meet all sorts of new people, especially early on in your entrepreneurial journey, and meet people who you might not get anything out of, I think early on in our journey, it was like, we need to meet people who could potentially be an investor, who could potentially be a partner, who could potentially sell us a deal.
You had an avatar, trying to find people that were in that avatar.
Yeah. And so every meeting of people, we went in with an agenda.
Yeah.
And people know when you go in with an agenda. I'll just say that much. You can sense when someone has an agenda. And sometimes agendas are fine. Sometimes we both know why we're meeting. We're meeting because you want this and I want this.
Right. And
that's fine. But I think there's something to be said about meeting as many people as you can that with no agenda, and you're just curious, asking questions, and focused on building a relationship. Because reason being, over the long term, and we've only been doing this for 2 to 3 years, so that's not even long term. We've already seen fruit from relationships that we've started to kind of build early on and just get coffee with and meet up with multiple times, thinking there was nothing to come from it other than just knowing that person. And then things start to come. They introduce you to somebody. They know someone who's interested in investing in real estate. They're like, I have this buddy who owns a 50-unit property over in the East Side, and he's been wanting to sell that thing for a while. He just kind of been sitting on it. Stuff like that happens over time. So I'd say be a yes man to meeting people, and don't be the kind of guy who's selfish about time and has to be you see that's the wisdom out there is you need to say no, learn how to say no.
Right.
I get it. There's times and places, but I think being a yes man when it comes to building relationships, all that does is I think set you up for more opportunity in the future.
That is counterintuitive advice that you're giving. I personally subscribe to that from the standpoint that I'm it's kind of that Zig Ziglar. His big thing was if you help people get to where they want to go, they will help you get to where you want to go. And sometimes you help somebody get to where they want to go and they don't help you, and that's okay. But when you have a bigger why than just sourcing deals and transactions. It's okay. And in the grand scheme of things, it's weird. From a spiritual perspective, it really does work out. Inexplicably. I mean, some of the biggest opportunities that we've had from financial partners or deals that we've bought have come from just organically being out there and being guys that are helpful, are like adding value to people. And because here's the deal, and this is probably, well, you didn't say this, but it's a piece of it. People are watching you when you don't think they are. So you leave an interaction and you just put a little seed in that person's brain, and you don't know when that person's like, man, I've been watching you for the last 4 years. We had one conversation long ago. You helped me with this. I see it all the time. So I think that's a great piece of advice. Still work your systems, still be focused on who you're going after, but be open-minded to new relationships.
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right, man. Well, let's land the plane here. Just in closing, what's been one of the biggest resources in your business development?
This was, I think, going to be the half of the last question. So I'll use this.
Sweet.
I'll use this answer for this one. I think the biggest is, okay, maybe I got two again. Take jumps and take risks, right? You're never going to be fully prepared. Don't ever think you're going to get to a point where you're fully prepared and your skills are developed in order to, okay, now I can go take this risk and jump into this new business or buy this property. Do that. But like we were talking about before, lean into your resources or like create, go find resources. I think partnerships that we've developed over the years have been one of the best learning experiences for us. And they've helped develop us much quicker. I think aside from just jumping in and doing things, not recklessly, but kind of just jumping in and doing things helps you get developed. But then leaning into partnerships, like when you're in your early stages of building any business, really, especially real estate, because it's so deal by deal, don't be afraid to give away chunks of that pie to people who know what they're doing.
Yeah,
because
right.
Not only will that help you get the deal done, it will also help you learn as you go. You can then take nuggets of wisdom and experience that they have gathered over the years and use that for yourself. And now you don't have to go through what they went through. You're literally working on them working with them on a deal now, to where you're learning what they've already learned years past. So for us, I think it wasn't necessarily, a YouTube channel or reading books or anything like that, because we really didn't do much of that. We jumped into real estate without having done much of that at all. It was leaning into partnerships and like real relationships with people and doing deals with people who we kind of vet and we know they're good at what they do.
Yeah.
That's where I've learned the most and developed.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. How can people follow you and find out more about your guys' success at 1027?
LinkedIn is like where I'm most active, I think. So like find Mitch Renda on LinkedIn. Kevin Renda is my partner. He's not as active on LinkedIn, but he's there. And then our website, 1027group.com, which I don't know when you guys are releasing this, but currently that's under construction. But our website has everything you need to know about us. And if you're interested in just talking and like entrepreneurial type stuff like we just did, always reach out. I always love talking about it. Investors, of course, always reach out too.
You guys host a meetup, don't you?
We do. We host a meetup that's actually tomorrow. It's the second Wednesday of every month with our good friend Lee, who you guys know very well.
Lee. He's a great dude.
Yeah. So once a month, second Wednesday of every month, we host a meetup here in Cincinnati, and we always feature somebody who's in real estate, whether it's an operator, broker, investor. They'll speak a little bit, share their knowledge and wisdom, and then we'll just kind of network. It's a great time.
Awesome, dude. Well, Mitch, thank you so much for coming on today. I think it's so valuable to hear from the guys that have been in business for 40 years and to mine that, and then also to talk to somebody who's got some reps in, but they're still learning along the way, and who's still young and still trying to figure it out. So thanks for your transparency there that way.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
Awesome, man. Blessings.
You too.
As always, excited that you joined us for another episode of the Reinvest Podcast. Stay tuned every Tuesday for new episodes. And if you want to learn how you can use your hard-earned capital to diversify into real estate, go to our website, lv5capital.com, and shoot us a message. Move farther, reach higher, and grow deeper. We'll see you next time.